Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Enlightened Conversations, where we invite our hosts and guests to share their views on the world, work, and their personal lives in an enlightened way. This season, we're also looking forward to engaging more with our audience, hearing your enlightened views, and answering questions and topics you would like us to weigh in on. Today's episode is hosted by Michelle Lightworker. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Enlightened Conversations with Michelle Lightworker. I've just had a download earlier this week that I would be doing some different Enlightened Conversations where it was addressing some topical issues and using my spiritual team as a sounding board and as a conversation and translating that across so that you get a snippet into how I've been basically asking for guidance and receiving it, and the form changes from year to year, but this current form has probably been in place since 2018, and I have a team that I speak with that consists of a variety of connections that I've had across the years, and they've all come together, and I wanted to share that with you. In fact, I didn't want to share that with you so much as I was guided to share that with you today, and I thought that this would probably come into play a little bit later in the year. However, I had set up a podcast with another person and we changed it, and then I'd forgotten we'd changed it. And I turned up today for it, and here we are. I've got a space, I'm all prepared. So I felt like I wanted to walk you through who my spiritual team is at the current time. Now, apart from loved ones who have crossed over, who I have a lot of contact with on an ongoing basis, my spiritual team, we kind of sit in like, a teams meeting, if you like, where if I have a question and I bring it to them, we have a bit of a, pass the pipe kind of thing. We're not literally passing a pipe, but we kind of go around and they speak to that topic. And that topic for me hasn't been made clear today at all. So potentially this is just an introduction into how this is done. I'm not sure. It's just unfolding as we go. What my team consists of, who they are. My first person that I'd like to mention, or being that I'd like to mention, and these are all representations of ourselves in some form, but this is how they symbolically come through, is Archangel Michael. Archangel Michael has been the guiding light in my guidance since 2005, when I had a encounter I was sitting in a steam room in a gym, and I was told by Archangel Michael that that's who they were, and in order to prove that, they asked me to go out into the reception and let a particular person let them know that their dog was okay, and they burst into tears and they said, "Oh, my dog passed on the weekend." I said, "Well, you need to know he's okay." And she said, "Thank you so much." And it was the beginning of me trusting my guidance and listening. And then I was told, after a few different assignments, you could say, that got me a little bit, I guess, ready and prepared. I was told to get a group of people together, and that I would be channeling through, with Archangel Michael's help, the principles of Lightworker training. And that's how that all started. And I advertised, I got people together, and I channeled through the 12 principles, which are the absolute bedrock of everything I do. You could say they're my spiritual navigation system. And so I have gone on to, accredit the Lightworker practitioner training, write the Everyday Lightworker Bible, which cross sections those 12 principles with our energy centers. I've written numerous articles for Holistic Bliss magazine. Lightworker Advocate magazine was also full of these, as that was the focus of the magazine. Shared those with my colleagues, talked about them in the Enlightened Conversation podcast, covered them in documentaries, and spoken about them in films that I've partaken in as well. So Archangel Michael has been a constant since that time, and I guess the energy behind Archangel Michael for me is, it's always about cutting to the core of the situation. It's always about no BS. It just goes right to the core of it, cuts away with his little sword, all the frilly bits, and just goes straight into the middle and goes, boom, this is the truth of the situation, that sort of truth that he wields. So for me, Archangel Michael, in this particular forum that I have, sits right at my very back, almost like he has my back. And so that was the first being that I have in this circle, and the second is on my left, which is Buddha. And Buddha tends to speak to the compassion side of things, and the joy. Compassion and joy, I would say, symbolically that of Buddha, and also very much in that non-attachment realm. So being quiet, seeing things from like a greater perspective, like a bigger point of view, more like a unity consciousness, and seeing everybody as equal and in unity. So that's Buddha. And then directly in front of me, but yet beyond, another being that also is in front of this being, that's just around in the circle, is Jesus. So I have Jesus, and I feel like Jesus speaks to the part of me that is really all about unconditional love in the situation, and goes that step into the direction of forgiveness and non-judgment, and letting go of judgment, and yeah, treating people how you would like to be treated, and seeing people's cry for love in a situation. So where they are maybe struggling with parts of themselves that they haven't forgiven as well, or maybe they're not even forgiving me. So that's Jesus. That's what tends to come through from Jesus. And then on my direct right of the circle is my Indigenous elders. I have worked with these Indigenous elders for quite a while. Back in 2009, I was guided to help people who had, particularly light workers, who had stayed behind when they had died, and that could be individually, or that could be on a mass, and to help them to cross over, because they felt that obliged to stay to help others cross over. And so I was being called to help them. So I would go to locations like 9/11 and other places where there had been bombings, and a lot of people had been annihilated. And I had first responders who were deceased and had stayed around to help others, and police men and women. And I had like, they didn't even know they were meant to leave. They thought they had to stay, and it was about helping the light workers to move on. We need you. So we need you to come on back in a different form now. And so in 2009, once I'd been doing that for a little while, probably about 6 months, I set up a centre in Uluru, an energetic centre, and I had people come there, like light workers who wanted to help continue that work. So I was actually training them on some of the techniques that I'd learned, and they would come to the centre and they would learn those techniques, and off they would go. So energetically, I wasn't traveling around the world so much energetically. I was more in the Uluru space. And that was where I made some really deep connections with the Indigenous elders of the land, and they were helping me, and Jesus helped me there too. And I gained a lot of, I guess, respect maybe is the best way to, from an honor point of view, is those elders that were working on that level of consciousness recognized what I was doing as helping the planet. And I felt a deep respect for them, because I felt like their love of Earth, their love of the, not just Australia, where our Indigenous population, the Aborigines, are today, but this more global love of the Earth, and the vibrational frequency of the planet, and that they could see, I guess, the respect of, well, we need this sort of, the light workers that stay behind for too long start to actually get heavy. And so what they were saying was, we need, this to happen. So thank you. And I felt like they could see what I was doing, or what I was being guided to do, as being helpful for the planet. So my Indigenous elders and I go back to 2009, and I'm sure they interchange, like I'm sure they move. There's different bodies of that Indigenous population represented as well. So it's just a group. It's actually a group to my right. So I don't look at faces. I just listen and I hear what they have to say and I respect it. And it's very grounded, extremely grounded and extremely planet focused. So they're on my direct right, and then straight in the middle is for those of you who don't know, but I have written a book about conversations with Ralph, and Ralph is the name for the interdimensional being that I met. That we had conversations with Ralph on numerous topics, and that we talked about how evolution, how our consciousness is evolving, and how what actually happens, why we're here, and what we need to do while we're here for that to happen. And so there's very powerful discussions. And so on a cosmic level, on a greater evolution of consciousness level, Ralph comes in and gives directives on that, how it comes into play in the present and how it is affecting our future and where we've come from and the steps required to get to where we want to go, and often gives me that sense of anything is possible, because like where that interdimensional being is from, they've seen everything. They're at the very end of helping to help the planet at the very end and what that looks like. And it's not the apocalypse. It's not at all anything like that whatsoever. It's very different. So Ralph is the being that comes into play for me and has really just added on another level of consciousness. I continue to have conversations with Ralph on different issues, and I have been asked by my team, my spiritual team, when I had a bit of meditation yesterday, that to turn up and to talk about my spiritual team, because this podcast is Enlightened Conversations. Now, when I first started Enlightened Conversations, it was really about how can we role model how to do a healthy conversation. We see a lot of conversations that are abusive. Even leaders in our society and the way they speak to each other can be quite abusive as well. And we see that in politics, we see that in, the movie arena, we see that in influencers can be quite abusive. So we see conversations as being, I think, as either contributing or contaminating our environment. And so Enlightened Conversations are about being able to speak about anything, any topic, without judgment. But having an opinion is cool. It's just like our opinion matters, and so does everybody else's. So it's about accepting that everybody has a different reality based on where they've come from, where they're going, what stage they're at, and everything should be spoken about from all points of view. So it isn't about being right and isn't about being wrong. Sometimes I 100% agree with people. I tell them, and I like to tell them, but other times I'm not sure if I get it, and that's cool. But I can still hold space and respond in a positive way that encourages them to feel validated with their current reality, because the reality is it is their current reality. And for us to think that we are the be all and end all and know everything is quite arrogant, and I think spiritually quite arrogant. So I like to be teachable, stay humble. So Enlightened Conversations started from my wanting to role model those conversations. And what it turned into was talking to amazing people that were just blowing my mind, that were doing amazing things. And this is going back to my first 3 seasons, which was 2016, 17 and 18. And then when I resumed Enlightened Conversations coming back in 2022 after a little hiatus, in which I had to do other spiritual assignments, What I have found Enlightened Conversations evolved into there was about me sharing my hiatus, my journey, being drawn to talk to leaders about really important issues around how we are leading and talking from that point of view as well. And now in 2023, what it's evolving into as well is more about, because I'm now technically retired. I'm not retired from my activism because I've always been activator for enlightenment, but from that sort of financial need to have a job to pay the rent and mortgage and all those things. So what's evolved for me is more about, again, about turning up and listening, and what spiritual assignment am I being given today. But also it's about talking, continue to expand and continue to be that spiritual humble person that says, well, I'm being drawn to learn about this. And as I learn about it, you guys learn about it. And I think when I think about it, a bit of my show High Vibe Hunter was like that as well, just checking out the high vibes and what's going on and what are people doing, and me learning, and that was on 5D TV. And so I'm feeling a sense of that too, like threads of that coming into play here. And now that I've been told to share my spiritual team and how they respond to different questions and things like that. And I've also just last week and the week before been guided to do Q&As more on what are the questions, what are, what's coming through, what are the questions that people want answers to at this time. So what I'm going to do is, I guess, just see what happens. I've never done this before with speaking to my spiritual team with like an audience. I've certainly done it with Ralph while I'm like typing, like I can channel and type. It's just something I haven't done before. So there is a little bit of fear there for me because I don't exactly know how to do this. So I'll just see if there's a topic or a question that's coming through, and then I will pass it around to my spiritual team, and I will let you know how they respond. If I can do that in real time, I will, but otherwise, just do it how it happens. Okay, so I was listening to Jean Sheehan on one of her live streams today, and she was coming in from Egypt, actually. She's on a trip to Egypt, and she was talking about how like for her, that it's been very much an activation for her to let go of suffering and to let go of not sharing, the whole truth, so like the whole sharing on a deeper level with everybody, the journey of everything. And I thought, oh wow, that's really interesting. As I'm sitting here, that's like repeating on me. And when things repeat on you, you keep thinking, it's like spirit is saying, hey, this is a nudge. This is a nudge. You need to speak to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to there's two things there that I'm feeling a topic. So there's the end of suffering, which she felt was coming through. And then there was the sharing deeply. And I'm going to pass it around to my spiritual team. I'm going to share what comes through. So here we go. So I'm just asking Archangel Michael now. So share with me what your thoughts are on the letting go of suffering. So at this time, people are being guided to let go of their past. And I'm seeing the sort of truth, do the waving of the cutting through cords, cutting through stuff that's holding them back, and to rely upon the next direct spiritual message they get, rather than hang on to a guaranteed outcome for a situation, and to walk in faith more. Okay. Yep, that makes sense. I'm kind of doing that now, so that makes a lot of sense. That's what I'm getting from Michael. So I'll move on to Buddha. There's so much joy in the release of suffering. And there's so much joy in the realization that suffering is temporary. Okay. But I'm also getting the message here too from Buddha that the suffering is temporary, but he's also showing me it's necessary, so that one has to feel something that they know they have to learn how to release. And that releasing, I'm being shown, is like a muscle Like, it's a practice. It's not something that happens overnight. He's saying it's a practice, and you get good at it. He's laughing. So you get good at that practice. Okay. So moving on to Jesus. Okay. Okay. He's just saying, forgiveness of self is the end of suffering. And there is no forgiveness required of anybody else, and I've heard this message before, so I will say that to everybody here, that it's not necessary to forgive everybody else, because there's nothing to forgive. Everybody's doing the best they can, and our judgment is the only thing that requires a forgiveness. The judgment of them is the only thing that requires the forgiveness of self, and the forgiveness of self is the end of suffering. And everything that we see is a representation of the mirror of ourselves anyway. So everybody is representing that. So we just need to actually learn to love and accept ourselves and that part of ourselves. And the only part of us we need to forgive is the part of us that has judged ourselves. So thank you, Jesus. Thank you for that. And then we have my beautiful Indigenous people. So they're saying, as we let go of suffering, our own suffering, we actually heal the land. Oh, I'm going to cry. Yeah. Okay. So that's necessary. So the tears of our suffering that I let go of heal the earth, enlighten the earth. And it's funny, we talk about enlightened conversations and saying that our tears that are released from our suffering, and that's part of the healing, and it's okay to cry and let the tears flow, is healing the earth. It's enlightening the earth, and the earth needs that. So it's not just our responsibility to think about the environment from a climate perspective. It's also our responsibility to think about the environment from a energetic healing perspective, and we're all responsible for that. So if we are very vested in climate change, we also need to look at our internal environment, because the external environment is a reflection of our internal environment. Oh. Now they're dancing, which they always do. And we often get into a little bit of a, yeah. Okay. And last but not least, Ralph, we're talking about suffering, releasing of the suffering. Okay. So Ralph is saying, and this is Ralph's big message, he's saying, the more we resolve our issues, the less we suffer. The more we actually intentionally look at what's beneath the suffering and resolve that, the least we suffer, the less we suffer. So our avoidance of looking at what's causing our suffering creates more suffering. Now I'm being shown, he's just showing me like how that is affecting not just ourselves, but everybody around us vibrationally. So it's, he's saying particularly for light workers who hold on to things themselves and don't look at it, that actually affects people more than you're trying to help to heal them. Often he's showing me this lens, that we have this lens as light workers and healers that we look through, that we have like to help, because if we don't help, we're not doing what we're here for, and we're not, it's like almost like our duty, like, call of duty. But what he's saying is that sometimes the call has to be the call to help ourselves at this level, when we get to a point of being quite enlightened, is more powerful for everybody around us than trying to help one person at a time and focus on that. So showing me that this is very powerful work. When we look at, if there's anything that we feel like needs to be shifted, don't feel guilty that you're taking the time to do that for yourself, because that is absolutely, without a doubt, a greater healing than just trying to heal that one person that you feel needs that help. So there you have it. Oh my goodness, there you have it. I've never done that before. That's a biggie. I'm just need to sort of take a breath. That and then we're as you can probably see, this is quite deep and powerful work. What I might do is I'll see how we go with this particular amount of time, because I'm not 100% sure on how long that took. And if I need to split this up into a second part, I will on the podcast. But I'll just go on to, because I don't know how long this second bit's going to take. But I'm just going to go on to talking about sharing from our deepest part of ourselves. When I heard Jean sharing, she said she shared snippets of information from her team for everybody, but not always the whole thing. Powerful snippets, and I get that they can be extremely too much for people. However, what I'm hearing Jean say is that now is the time to actually share more deeply. And I can relate to that. Look, I'm doing it actually today. So thanks, Jean. This has obviously come at a profound time for me as well. So let's go into talking about how sharing from the most deepest part of ourselves is going to help us and get us more of what we want. Okay, let's have a look. So we'll go with Michael. So what I'm getting from Michael is, even though we don't think we're sharing all of ourselves on an energetic level, that's an illusion, because we are sharing all of ourselves all the time. Even the parts that are hidden are also being communicated. And if they're not being communicated with our words, they're still being communicated with our energy. So he's saying it's always good to check in with how much you should share with whom, from an honesty perspective with your words. But it's still, he's showing me that it's already known, it's already seen, and there is no to those of you who, this is a little bit of a message to those of you who feel like you're being watched all the time. Of course, there are all eyes on you, because everybody that energetically, the spirit world sees everything. So it's when we think about being watched, we can think about it, and it can create, like he's showing me like an anxiety that people feel, oh no, I don't want to be seen, I don't want to be seen. And so that needs to be dealt with, because we are seen all the time. So what I'm being shown here is that to think we're not sharing our most deepest selves all the time is an illusion. So we just need to get better at sharing it with our words. And in order to do that, we also need to ask, what should I say to whom and when, so that it's safe for us, especially if we're feeling vulnerable, and it's, safe for everybody else in the way we're sharing it. And we can take some time to check in meditation, to showing me to just get clarity on exactly how much and how we can share that. Could be in other creative ways, not necessarily with our words, maybe with our art or other things. So it's quite deep, very deep. Okay, I'm going to move on to Buddha. So first thing he said was sharing is everything. So he says, if we don't share, we withhold. And if we withhold, that leads to madness. Right. Egocentricity, that he's showing me like that it's a spiritual arrogance. And he's saying this is a madness because it's not spiritual to be arrogant, it's false spirituality is what he's saying. So share more. Yeah. Okay, I got it. That's good. I'm getting a lot out of this, by the way. I just want to just share that this is really helping for me, because I'm stepping into this new phase myself, and it's really opening me up. I'm just going to keep going. Okay, Jesus. Okay. So what he's saying is sharing parts of ourselves gives other people permission to share those parts of themselves. Yeah. So that, yeah, I get that. So that from that unconditional love point of view, we're loving the part of ourselves that is sharing enough. And so therefore other people feel loved. And so that encourages them to also then be responsive back. I see that like an infinity thing as well. Okay. So he's just saying that sharing should be done from the aspect as well of having mindfulness around how that is going to be received. Um, so there is a social responsibility around our sharing, and he's showing me we don't have control over being activators. Like we will trigger people, sure, but it's not about that. He's just saying we just need to be really aware of the impact. And so say we're sharing something really deeply and someone responds really aggressively or really inappropriately, and that could happen from time to time, is to be okay with the fact that it may well have triggered them, that's something that they're not ready to look at, and to just be able to not take that personally, because often when we're sharing from that really vulnerable space, we don't have great boundaries. We like all the boundaries are down. So what he's showing is if we could have another part of ourselves on board that is willing to step in to just be able to hold that part of ourselves that just shared, and to be able to still love and hold space for a person that might be switched into a different gear, that's going to be really supportive of ourselves, and it will preempt any preemptive pain I'm getting or abuse, or we can not be surprised. We can be hold a compassionate space for that person, because and that's very compassionate for ourselves too. So there's that unconditional love aspect as well. So moving on to our tribal elders, and we're speaking about sharing deeply. Oh God, they always make me cry. So yeah, they're just saying like truth telling is everything. It's the story. It helps heal the listener and again the land. Okay. So they're just saying to me on an energetic level that truth telling opens up portals of energy everywhere. So it's not just about ourselves. So they're showing us that when we speak our truth and we unlock something, we also actually unlock things that need to be unlocked that are way bigger than ourselves, that help the whole planet. Okay, thank you. Another dance. Oh, I love them so much. Okay, Ralph. Okay. So he's showing me a vision of unraveling our story and sharing that for all to see. Unravels like a gold path. It's like there's a clearer path. So it's like if you don't share deeply one aspect, then this golden path doesn't roll out for you. And it was like this carpet, like a gold, like rolling out before somebody after they've shared their truth. It's like something else. It's like you clear this away, and then something else opens up. And he's also reminding me of something that I learned recently, which was when you share your truth with someone who's able to actually hear you, that the stress in your brain is halved. The chemical stress in your brain and the actual stress that the energy of this that you're holding onto is actually halved when you share it appropriately with people that listen. And when you share it with people that are going to not understand or even hear you, it actually doubles. So the stress of this unhealing or this story. So he's just saying to me that make sure that before you share your story, you have people that you know that that they can hold that energy unconditionally and in a non-judgmental way. And he's showing me that that's part of your responsibility of self-care to yourself. And he's also sharing with me that it's good to have those people set up before something happens. So like if you feel like right now you don't have something that is big to share, but you still have to have those people in your life that if you did need to share something, that support would be there. And that's really important. So that's what I'm getting around sharing deeply. Oh, okay. So I'm going to leave it there today. I hope you've enjoyed this very different episode of Enlightened Conversations, very, very deeply personal episode of Enlightened Conversations. And if you have any questions or any like thing that you would like to throw at the team, I'd be happy to do that and have another one of these. And I'm just looking forward to seeing how it all unfolds. Thank you everybody for joining me, and we'll see you next time on Enlightened Conversations. Bye for now.